Hey everyone, Clint here from Oakland Iron Outdoors, and what I want to talk about today is 5 tips on how I feel Tactacam can improve on their current lineup of cameras. So let's go over that right now. Hey everyone, one thing I want to mention real quick though is that I am not associated with Tacticam in any way. I paid 100% for all of my reveals. I just want to throw that out there. So that little disclaimer that I am not associated with Tacticam at all, and that this is going to be a totally unbiased review. Right, Chloe? Chloe, can you say hi? This is my older Brittany. Chloe, I have Lily that you might have seen in my past videos. This is my old girl, Chloe. She's 14 years old, so brought her along on today's video. So one thing I want to talk about real quick is some pros of Tactacam. I don't want this to be a video that makes it sound like, that Tactacam isn't the greatest or whatever the case may be, and that's by far from the truth. What I'm trying to show here, what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to maybe open up some different avenues for Tactacam and their designers to maybe improve on their products. But one thing that I really like about Tactacam are some of the little things that Tactacam does already. So let's talk about some of those pros right now, and then I'm going to go over some of those little tips, those 5 tips in regards to how Tactacam can make this a little bit better product. And then at the end, I'm going to share with you what I feel is my very favorite reveal out of all the reveals I've used. Okay, let's go over those pros now. All right, so one little thing that I actually really like, and I don't know if this is meant by design from Tactacam, but are these little notches that you see right in the back here. I don't know if you can see that. I'm going to zoom in. You see that little half moon notch? And what I like about these notches is not only do they grip into the tree a little bit more if you go straight, but for me, what I do is most of my cameras are hung about head height or a little higher for today's purpose for videoing. I'm having it just a little bit lower than normal. But what I like to do is I like to break off a stick like such, and then it's just a perfect size notch to put that stick in. And what that does is when that stick is in there, it points that camera downward. And usually it's just enough of a downward angle that I'm looking for to catch deer coming through. Because obviously if I have this camera up 7-8 feet in the air and I point it straight, I'm going to miss a lot of the deer. So one thing I really like about these Tactacams is that little half moon notch in the back. All right, another little component that I've always liked with Tactacams are these doors and the ability to put a Python cable and lock that door so you can't get at the SD card or at the controls or at the batteries for the most part. So this little key component here is huge. And matter of fact, I wish cameras would have done that a long time ago, because I had some SD cards that were taken out of a trail camera, and with this, that would have never happened. So folks, this little dealy-do here with that lockable door, to me is huge. Matter of fact, I will not put up a reveal without the Python cable, even on private land. Matter of fact, I was just talking to an individual who had a camera next to mine on private land, because we shared the piece, and he had his SD card stolen. And my camera was probably only maybe about 40 to 50 yards away. Obviously, my card wasn't stolen. So this little guy right here, with that Python cable to be able to go through that, to me is a huge benefit of the reveals. Another pro real quick is these antennas that can move back and forth. I think that just helps prevent them from being broken. And matter of fact, you can unscrew them off, or in case they ever were broken, you can just contact Tactacam and just order a new antenna from them. But that ability to essentially take shock away from being broken, especially when raccoons play on them, I think is huge. And then the other thing I like to do is I just like to take my antenna here, and then I like to just lean it backwards. That just keeps it up a little higher, and it just keeps it from falling down forward. So another neat little feature from Tactacam. All right, another little feature that some of you may not be aware of, and you know what, I'm not even sure if Tactacam is aware of, but I like it how they put the sensor up high above the lens right here, okay? So I've had cameras in the past of other different companies that put that sensor below the lens. And what can happen is the woodpeckers can get down below the tree, and it makes it easier for them to actually peck at that sensor. And actually, I have a busted sensor on a couple other cameras from woodpeckers. So by putting the sensor up high above that lens, I just think it's prevented woodpeckers from essentially getting at it or getting it as much. Doesn't say it can't happen, or maybe it doesn't happen to some of you folks out there. But I've never had a woodpecker essentially peck on the sensor. So another little key feature. So another neat little feature that I like that I don't think a lot of people are aware of is that on the XB model and the X Pro, is that if you go into the test feature, okay, so when you put that on and you're trying to get your bars, okay, to see what your signal strength is, all right, if you forget to turn that into the on position, all right, it will still take pictures. I'm not sure of the other models, but I'm aware of the XB, and the XB Pro kind of has the brain fart feature, if you want to call it that. You know, if you don't put that all the way up in the on position, it will still take pictures. And I've done that in the past with some of my other cameras to find out that I was in a test feature with a different brand, and then to realize that it wasn't on. It was an SD card pull camera. Came back a couple months later, and the camera was never on to begin with. Now with the cell cams, obviously, that's a component that you don't have to worry about. It's another nice feature. So yes, the brain fart feature, as I call it, is a really nice feature to have on the XB and the XB Pro. So continue to do that, folks, because as some of us get older, that's a nice little feature to have. All right, the last Pro that I have here, essentially are these solar panels with a built-in battery, okay? I've actually really enjoyed these. I picked up two this year, essentially to try out before I went crazy on them. I also used the battery boxes, but these have done me well. And you know, I tested them all year in actually we'll call them semi-sunny, semi-shaded areas. And for my usage, which is around 20 to 25 pics a day, okay, and that includes deer, coons, squirrels, and everything in between. All right, these have been sufficient. They've energized enough or built up their capacity enough that I didn't have to worry about putting the batteries or the internal batteries within the camera. So that is a Pro. Now, with that being said, let's go over the things, the 5 items that I think Tactacam can do to make some better products. All right, so the first tip that I think Tactacam can do easily, all right, is obviously if you have your camera and you're using a Python cable like I do to lock the camera to the tree, all right, you know, I think it's just as important to be able to lock this guy to the tree because people can take your power source, all right? You know, and, you know, you don't have to have internal batteries to run a power source. So if somebody takes this solar panel, you're kind of SOL, all right? So I think what the best idea to do here, Tactacam, is to add a main big plastic piece, all right? You could run it all the way through the solar panel, so that way when you run your Python cable, you can just run it all the way through. You can just take your Python cable and just run it all the way through the back of the solar panel as well. And now you have one Python cable that's essentially taking care of 2 items from being stolen. So tip number 1, Tactacam, is to be able to attach the camera, which you already done, with the solar panel, locking both together. Tip number 2, Tactacam, that I would like to see is the ability to lock essentially the input of the camera here, okay? I think if you would take this door here, and when you open it up, put like a rubber gasket on it, and then have the ability to put a plug on it, but to be able to lock this cord in here, okay? So somebody just can't come along now, all right, and just pull this out. And then the same with essentially the solar panel, essentially cut your energy off, assuming that you don't have internal batteries. Now, if you have internal batteries within your camera, that's not a big deal. But the other reason it could be a big deal, though, is I also like to run my battery boxes, all right? Now, we got Lily right here. Hey, Lily. And I also have my battery box here that I create. And I made a video last year in regards to making your own battery box, all right? So I'll hook that up to the end of my video so you can see how I did that. And then I run the cord, obviously, through here. And then this cord, obviously, would take the place of the took the solar panel out, and then would just go into here as well. But once again, somebody can just come along and snatch this out. And now I'm going to look closely here. If you look closely here, you can see that there's some width to this. So if you would just create a box with a hole, or essentially a door with a hole, that would close tight, super tight on this, and it would make it close to impossible. Probably hard to make it impossible, but close to impossible to lock this in place so people just can't pull that piece out walking by. All right. So tip number 2 is to be able to lock essentially these components into the camera and into the solar panel so they can't be pulled out. And that way I don't have to try to rely on internal batteries, which do cost quite a bit of money. And I can just rely either on the solar source or the battery box. Next tip is essentially built-in SD card or built-in memory, however you want to look at it. I think when people steal these Tactacams at times, they're just looking for that SD card. They want to know what's on there, especially if they know that a big buck was in their area, if you're on public land or whatever the case might be. And I think taking the SD card essentially out of the equation would keep them from stealing it, knowing that there's nothing to steal from them, that they'd actually have built-in memory. And I think some of the biggest issues that I see on forums with people is they don't purchase the right SD card. And, if you had built-in memory, that's an issue that they don't have to worry about. And I think a lot of the issues that people reach out to Tacticam, filling up your phone lines and your essentially text messages, is when it comes down to it, people have the wrong SD card. So if you had the built-in memory, I think it would free up more time on Tacticam's end. And like I said, it would just make it easier. And then I don't have to go out and purchase another SD card. And I might save a little bit of money on my end. So built-in SD card or built-in memory is the next tip. All right, I'm going to get out there just a little bit with this tip here. But it's essentially to have a movable lens, okay, or essentially a movable eye right here. Now, the reason I say that is I made 2 mistakes this year putting out my reveals, and it's all on me. And I was in a hurry, put my cameras out, and in doing so, I had the cameras pointing up too high. And in one spot, I drove about 5 hours to put some reveals out, and the reveal was too high, and I wasn't going to drive back just to fix it. But you know what? A cool little feature that I'm thinking about is if you could just take this lens and have it operable off the app and be able to move that lens, let's say 20 degrees in either direction, all right? So if I've had my camera too high, I could just move that lens down via the app downward to be able to have it at the right area so I could catch the deer coming through. The issue that I had is that the lens was too high and it wasn't catching any of the deer that were coming through the particular area. When I came back later, there were tracks galore and I didn't catch really any of those deer that came through. The other issue that I've had too is just due to Mother Nature. Raccoons like to jump on these guys, especially, when you get them on those posts that come off the tree and they can get moved around. And in a couple instances, if I just had a movable lens, I can move that lens in different directions. I wouldn't actually have to come back out to fix the camera, at least fix the camera right away. I could just move that lens back and forth. Now, anytime you have anything that moves, it might require the camera to have an open space, especially if it's on like a ball and socket pivot, and that can create water to get into it. So I understand there's that component as well. But Tacticam, if you could figure out a way to make that lens pivot up and down, even just 20 degrees, I think, in different directions, I think that'd be a very cool feature to have for the Tacticam reveals going forward. The 5th tip is having a little built-in battery that would actually stay in the camera that could not be accessed essentially by the customer. And from my understanding is that the camera that you can track where your camera goes, assuming that it's stolen, is that if the thief takes out the main batteries, okay, you are no longer able to track it, or that small little internal battery would be able to continue that tracking component all the way through, even if the main batteries were taken out. And I would just set it up so that little mini battery, the internal battery, would just be recharged whenever you put any type of a charging device, your main batteries, your solar panel, or an external source into your trail camera. And then you could use that little internal battery to do maybe little other features. A cool little feature maybe is a little light component that you can turn on yourself. So for instance, you know, when I'm bow hunting, I'm not going beforehand to pull a camera or to move a camera. I'm going to do it after my evening of bow hunting, and it's going to be dark, you know. So maybe even if you had a little feature where you could hit your app, hit a button, and there'll be a little special light that'll come on here, and it just helps you track and find that camera after dark, something that you're looking for after dark. Or maybe you thought you misplaced it. Maybe you put it somewhere and you're like, oh man, where did I place it? And just had a little external light, a special light that would just, let's say, flash and let you know exactly where it is in the woods after dark, that you could run off of that internal little battery. Okay, so that is the 5th tip in regards to making Tactacam maybe just a little bit better going forward. One little shout out that I want to throw out there is that, you know, working with Tactacam for me has been very good. I know some people may agree, may disagree, but one individual that I want to throw some kudos out to is Tactacam Kim. Tactacam Kim has been a great resource when I've had questions in regards to my reveals, and she's always answered promptly and gave me a spot on answer. And you know, Tactacam, if there's somebody that needs some recognition at your facility, at your business, it's Tactacam Kim. So Kim, keep doing what you do, and thank you for always helping me out in regards to my Tactacam reveals. Chloe and Lily are having a great time in the woods today. It's just a beautiful day to be in the woods. So folks, if you'd like, please hit that subscribe button. I'd really appreciate it. And you know, and at the end of the video, I'm going to put on there how I make my battery boxes, the video that I made earlier last year. It's been a very resourceful video for a lot of people out there, and seems like it's gotten a really good response. The other thing I just want to mention as well is Tactacam, you know, these are just tips to help you out. It's not verbatim. It's just some ideas, you know. And for you folks that are watching at home, put down below, do you like these ideas that I have? What are some of your ideas to help Tactacam? You know, because as a community, as a group, I think this is the way that we can make products better. I mean, obviously we're going to utilize them. We're purchasing them. We're using our hard-earned money, you know, and I think it's just the best way that we can make our dollar go a little bit longer and make our hunts a little bit more enjoyable in the woods, all right? So until next time, folks, Clint from Oak and Iron Outdoors.